I'd like to call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting, Village of North Aurora, Monday, April 20th, 2020. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mayor Berman?
Here.
Trustee Capino?
Here.
Trustee Lowry?
Here.
Trustee Curtis?
Here.
Trustee Carroll?
Here.
Trustee Martinez?
Here.
Trustee Gately?
Here.
Audience comments?
I do not see any, Mr. Berman.
Very good, thank you. Trustee comments? Our one item of discussion is the fiscal 2020-21 budget. Steve?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a little unusual in the sense that when we do our budget process, typically we go through the Committee of the Whole to review our budget in March, which we did. The difference is April's always been that month where if there's any questions from the board, we'll bring the budget back for review. There weren't any questions, but we were about to proceed to May as normal for final approval, but obviously things changed, and as the lockdown, as the whatever you want to call it, the stay-at-home order has really changed our economic outlook. The staff has to readjust, and the nice thing about the timing of our budget cycle is we're a June 1 budget year. Most towns are May 1. So that extra month has actually given us an opportunity to take a good look at our budget and not approve a budget that we know is going to be out of whack as far as the revenues. So with that being said, Bill Hanna, our finance director, did a fantastic job of putting together a list of revenue projections that he's changed for the upcoming fiscal year. He's also worked with me in order to and the staff to come up with ideas to cut expenditures. What you're going to see is basically the general fund being slashed in the revenue side by about $800,000, but with $800,000 in expenditure offsets. So we're still presenting a balanced budget in our operating fund for the upcoming year. And Bill's also going to tell you that we're doing okay for this current fiscal year and that we should end up pretty well. So that being said, Bill Hanna's going to walk us through everything.
Hey, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Steve alluded to the fact that we presented the budget back in March with the understanding that based on how things unfold, we may have to make some adjustments. And that's been the case certainly since then. We've tried to do the best job that we can to come up with what we think are some reasonable sort of first go around adjustments to our revenue outlook going forward. A lot of those things were listed in the packet, so I'm not going to go through every single one. We made adjustments to revenues. We reallocated some revenues. We reduced some transfers out in different places, all with the goal ultimately of making sure we're maintaining our strong financial position and that we can support core village services going forward. So I don't know if we want to put the items on the screen at all. I'm not going to go through every single one. I think they were emailed out, but some of the more significant ones, there was a comparison of what was originally in the budget for revenues or expenditures and what the revision was. So don't be confused if thinking that it's a year-to-year change in that item. A couple of the bigger ones was for sales tax. We revised that one down from about 5.2 million to about 4.7 million for next year, just based on the slowdown in economic activity. Our state shared income tax revenue, we lowered that as well. That was about 1.9 million, and we lowered that to about 1.6 million. There were a number of other revenue estimates for the general fund that we lowered that affected video gaming, OTD handle tax, amusement tax, building permits, cable franchise fees. A lot of those being adjusted down, just obviously with decreased economic activity in the short term, and with an uncertain recovery path going forward. When we get back to some sort of version of normal, what does that look like, and what is the path, in order to get to that place. We also made an adjustment for the general fund by reallocating our telecommunications tax revenue to the general fund fully. It was previously split between the capital projects fund and the general fund. So we made that reallocation proposal as well with these changes. All in all, for the general fund, we had just over $768,000 net of revenue adjustments in our budget. So that went from about 12.5 million to about 11.7 million for next year. On the expenditure side, we made some adjustments. One of the adjustments we made across all departments was reducing our transfers to the vehicle and equipment fund by about 50%. We've got a good enough reserve in that fund to continue to do what we need to do to replace vehicles and equipment that needs replacing without jeopardizing that process. So we've made those reductions 50%. We reduced some contractual expenditures for building permits, having taken a closer look at what the activity is going to look like and what a more realistic number for that is going forward. So that was reduced by about $45,000. We have a few open positions, some new ones that we're still looking to eventually fill. We're putting that off a little bit, a few months, maybe 4 months, 5 months into the fiscal year, just to give us some time to evaluate, what the economic impact is from everything going forward. And that'll buy us a little time to get some more information about what some of the numbers are looking like out there and to see how that all fits in the big picture. We eliminated some seasonal labor in public works. We reduced the allocation for contracted tree trimming back to what it was in the current year. And then finally, we reduced the transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund from 600,000 to 200,000. If you recall, the 600,000 was loosely based on the initial projected allocation for the 3% cannabis tax starting July 1st. So we lowered that as well. We're still showing transferring 200,000 to the capital projects fund, but that's a number that'll probably change going forward. It could be less, it could be more. There's a lot of variables out there that we just don't have enough information at this time to make any significant decisions on that going forward. We also, so on the expenditures and transfers out for the general fund, we wound up reducing that by about $760,000 as well. So at the end of the day, we went from about 12.5 million in revenues and expenditures in the general fund to about 11.7 million revenues and expenditures, including transfers out in the general fund. There was a few other adjustments we made in other funds, notably motor fuel tax revenue. Obviously, a significant decrease in gas purchases right now and projected going forward for a little while. So we lowered those revenues in total by about $145,000 from what we were originally estimating. We made some adjustments to our TIF increment allocations based on the actual numbers we got from the county. And we made some adjustments to our projections for hotel tax that goes into the tourism fund just due to the decreased economic activity. And we also decreased our revenues in our capital projects fund. Our non-home rule sales tax, we revised our projection from 1,090,000 to about 900,000. And we lowered our utility tax estimates for electricity and gas based on decreased usage as well. So those were the most significant changes. Like Steve said, we have an opportunity to make some, what we think are some responsible changes to our draft budget as it was originally presented that puts us in a better position to address whatever additional economic fiscal issues we might need to address going forward. And overall, the goal was to maintain our strong financial position, our liquidity, making sure we're taking care of our core services, and buying us some time to reevaluate things going forward. So that's the overall summary, and be happy to take any questions.
I thought you did a very impressive job. Very good.
Bill, fantastic. I think that, your projections came earlier than some other projections that I've seen from the state level and other communities. And obviously you're right on. The best thing, I look at it and I said, a lot of things we do every year are to prepare for the future, not so much as our spending, on the current thing, but preparing for the future. So we are cutting back a little bit on our preparation for the future, but not to the extent that it's damaging to us. So I think it's fantastic.
To Dale's point, speaking of preparing for the future, have we done anything to increase our levels of PPE so that if we do find out, there's a second wave, a second surge, or something, another virus comes out, I'd like to take this experience and at least build on it and make our village a safer place to work for our employees and make sure that we're prepared.
Yeah, I can answer that. We have, I know the police department, we've got a surplus, not a huge one, but a surplus of all types of PPE, all the way from hand sanitizer to the face masks and all of that stuff. So yes, we're doing our best to replenish everything through the county as we can ahead of time before we get to low levels. So we're actually in good shape with that.
We're getting good cooperation from the county and certainly from the sheriff's department. So I think all in all, things are great. Any other discussion of the budget?
Just one other thing to add, our plan right now is to present the modified draft budget to the village board for approval at the first meeting in May. And at the point, after that point, like I said, we're gonna already start running multiple scenarios to see what the numbers might look like going forward.
Okay.
All right. Well, I have a comment. I had a call Saturday from our Congressman Bill Foster, and very concerned about. Are we there? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, he was very concerned about the village and our capabilities of going forward. And I told him that we were in very good shape. We were adjusting our budget, and we looked at things looked very favorable from that standpoint. He was much concerned, Laura, the same as you are, about getting back to normal and getting those people that are not working and not getting any income, especially the small businesses, as well as those individuals that are working in the, in the stores that are closed, or the, in the restaurants and all that. So he was quite concerned about that and wanting to know what he can do to help us. Well, I told him that I felt that they were working on some pretty good programs in Washington to come up with helping individuals. I wasn't speaking specifically about anything, but they're still working at coming up with new programs and new billions of dollars, trillions of dollars to help. So unless any of you know of something that we could pass on to him, that would be helpful to us. Certainly, let Steve or I know, and I will pass it on to Foster. I was very happy to have his call. It's great that we know our representatives and we can talk to them on a very casual, easy basis, as opposed to some of the, I think of some of the things that are going on between the governor and the president. Anyway, anybody has anything, let's bring it up.
Mayor, Dale, I think one thing, the bill that's being contemplated in Washington right now, one of the sticky points is the availability for municipalities. And I think with the loss of revenue that we're going to see, I would certainly like us to apply or be a candidate for some relief directly from Washington to the village itself.
That's interesting you said that, because there is a wave going out, or something went out today from the state, or from you remember Steve who sent the letter that we're all behind him.
I thought it was Metro West. I thought it was Metro West, but it might have been the IML.
I think it might have been IML. Anyway,
It was the IML.
they're looking for, I don't know, 900 and some million for the state of Illinois for just municipalities. So yeah, we're working on that. So we're not forgotten yet.
Because it's my understanding that's stuck in the Senate right now, and they've got no agreement. So if we can put pressure on them,
Well, that's good.
throw
And
our
that was,
support.
yeah, that was a suggestion in the notice from IML also that we need to. So I will call Bill Foster and pass that on.
Very good.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Well, it's great that everybody was able to be on. I'm worried about Tal. I'm worried about you. I hope you're doing well.
I am, I wanted to mention something to you as far as Bill Foster. I've been working in reviewing a lot of the different guidelines and standards that are set up for the CDC as far as containment and preventing disinfection or preventing maintenance. And I think that one of the things that it's a pretty big concern to me is that people seems to be confused over guidelines and standards. When we're looking at guidelines, I like to go through and mention that it's a preventative guideline. It's not by any means a standard for disinfection, because what I'm noticing out there is I understand that economy-wise, the whole entire U.S. is taking a toll. But what I'm also noticing is it's an effect like what we had with 9/11, right? Where everybody that's out there taking a proactive measure towards taking lead on some of the situations is not necessarily taking the right precautions. And with 9/11, what we had is a lot of emergency responders and a lot of people that were involved having side effects years later, right? And that's what I'm trying to present to the CDC at this point at a federal level, that that their guidelines need to be just a guideline or a preventative guideline, because people are following those guidelines as a standard, and is unfortunately going to take a toll on everybody that is not necessarily taking the right measures. So if that was something that could be presented to Bill Foster, I just happen to be overwhelmed to call everybody out there that I can reach out to. Some of the people are reaching out directly, but in reality, there's a big misconception as far as all of that. And the last thing I want to see is people that are taking a positive action, thinking they're doing right and taking a proactive measure, be hurt as a result of not knowing or not necessarily have the right understanding and chemistry and the effects that are going to hold after years later in their lungs and their health.
Well,
So,
if there's something that you want to get to me that I can get to him, you obviously have the same road to Foster that I have. The last time I called him on his cell phone, there were 2 days worth of messages out there that he had to work through to get answers to. But that's what happens. But we certainly will pass on anything that we can.
yeah,
One thing
appreciate
though,
it, Bill.
Tal, we got to remember that the governor's got some strong people working with him, some very intelligent, scientific people working with him, and so does the president. So, we're not working alone. We have to listen to those people. That's what that's what we have to do. And we have to, factor all that, everything you learn, and come up with, decisions based on that. But I think there's some of the nation's best people are involved.
Dale, can I make a comment? I want to circle back to what
Okay.
Laura asked. Laura asked earlier or commented, and I think one of our top priorities is the village officials is the safety of our residents, and as much as we all want to see everything back to normal and things flourishing, I think we have to abide by what the governor says, and like you just said, Dale, that they have a lot of smart people and scientists and studies and things that they're working on or working with to come up with what's going on, and I think it'd be prudent for us to abide by those and see how it goes in the next few weeks. And I don't think it'd be wise just to open things up and do that. So I agree with you, Dale, and Trustee Gately, as I think we really need to be prudent and the safety of our residents, and the businesses and all involved. So that's where I'm at.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate it. And I think our federal government is working hard at coming up with solutions, especially for the small businessman, even though, those funds were used up pretty rapidly, but I don't think it's over yet. And, I think back to the days of the 30s. We're not going to have the WPA and the CCC boys and all those other things, but hopefully we're not going to have soup lines either. So we'll just wait it out. All right. Any other comments? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody.
Good night.